Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another glorious episode of Age of Awæcnian, Soulful Stories Unveiled. I think, Flea, every time I say that, I always think of our little song that we're going to record. Maybe we need to record it with our next beautiful guest, but Age of I'm going to say Aquarius.
I don't know the actual words to it. It's like, that's all I know. It's like the Age of Awæcnian. Yeah. That's it. That's all I know. So that's the content of the song, and we'll put some cool tunes in there, and we can all just click along and dance and have fun, because that's kind of what we do, right?
Yeah, you got to have fun. Yeah, the Age of Aquarius song. For those that are new and listening in, when we thought of the title of Age of Awæcnian, I thought of that song Age of Aquarius, and we are in the Age of Aquarius, and it is time to dive into stories that awaken our souls and share what's on our hearts. And this is what we love doing when we chat together, when we invite guests on. And we just love going with the flow, because we found that that's our vibe, right, Flea?
That's how we do it. We've tried structure, we've tried planning, we've had teleprompters, we've done the works, and they just all seem to unravel and just become our lovely little rambles, which people have come to know us for doing. It's like, yes, we've gone off on a tangent. That's fine. It comes back and it all means something. So we're definitely looking more like we are ramblers, and it is such a cool way to start a story.
Yeah. But these pieces of storytelling, which is what we have just always come back to the heart of, where the authenticity lies. Like, there is magic in that, and there is a wildness in that, and there's also like a deep, deep piece of resonance that, whether you're with a loved one, your family members, with strangers or friends, when you open your hearts and you start sharing who you are, like that, there is medicine. And I think as society, we forget how powerful conversation is and how powerful our voices are when we're just authentically ourselves. And this is, what we love unveiling more of within each other and with our beautiful guests. And I know, Flea, you always love doing a beautiful card reading. Is there anything that has unfolded for today before we introduce our next beautiful guest?
The interesting one that stood out and came out first was the balance or the justice card in traditional tarot. So, talking about, I guess, the divine timing, the justice that is brought about by the world. We're yet to see how this unfolds, but that's kind of the theme. And I guess we'll see where that idea of balance and justice comes out.
Yeah, beautiful. And without any further ado, I'm so excited to introduce our next guest, the amazing Bashir Youssef. And I met Bash a few weeks ago now. Yeah, not too long ago, at the amazing gala night for Beam Awards Australia. And I always trust the divine timing of what unfolds, because I went there by myself to represent Awæcnian Academy, and it was this beautiful manifestation of the nominations unfolding and just authentically being transparent, being myself, and finding myself at this table. And I had Bash and also another amazing new friend, Kate, who was assisting you and is one of your beautiful friends that came along. And I was sitting right next to you guys, and you, Bash, were about to present the acknowledgement of country at this award ceremony. And Bash is an intuitive medicine man, I feel, with your music, your producer, your motivational speaker, and you play the didgeridoo, and I just love your story in the snippet. So welcome, Bash, who's the founder of the Blind Mystery Experience as well. How are you feeling today, Bash?
I'm feeling great and excited to be on here. A little bit nervous, but that's always good. Keeps the energy flowing, so it's great. And happy to be here chatting with you both and being on this interview on this podcast.
Ah, amazing.
Definitely no need to be nervous.
And I wanted to say as well, and I wanted to say as well what you were both speaking to there about like conversation, having a chat. Like what you both were saying there reminds me of what the Indigenous used to call having a yarn. You know, when they used to sit in circle with the elders and the young, and they all used to have a yarn and share wisdom, share experiences, share stories. So it's beautiful what you both spoke to there, because it's something ancient as well that the Indigenous people did as well.
I love that.
Mm.
And Flea, you also have a background as well, having yarns growing up and having the aunties look after you in your childhood. And I love this piece that we get to weave the old and the new in contemporary society, and also in different cultures and things like that. And I think that ancient piece of coming together in community is something we're all really passionate about. And the music you play, Bash, is really powerful, and it comes from the heart. And before in the backstage, we were just sharing a little bit about, like you were sharing a little bit about your story and your history, and your parents coming from Lebanon and having a better life. And I think all of us, I know my mum, who's Filipino, wanted to come to Australia as well. And Flea has her own beautiful background in traveling all around the place in her upbringing, and seeing an array of the Australian culture as well. And so
Yes.
what is it, Bash, that, growing up Australian, also growing up, I suppose, having a disability as well, would love to dive a little bit deeper into your journey, seeing as though we're talking about childhood a little bit. Would love to find out, like, what some of your experiences were and the challenges, and what you noticed in your upbringing.
Absolutely. So, like as you mentioned, I come from a Lebanese family. I was born in Australia, born and raised in Australia, and my parents came, yeah, in the late 60s, early 70s, and like many, families that came from overseas, from the different migrant countries, to create a better life for themselves and their families. And so I was born the youngest of five. And as you mentioned, I was born with a disability. I am actually classified as legally blind. I just like to say to people I'm partially blind, because sometimes people get confused and they say, well, you can still see. So like their sort of mind attaches to the idea of blind, as in not seeing at all. So that's the most severe case of blindness, of course, so you can't see anything at all. So growing up, it was, I'm very grateful to have grown up in such a beautiful family that was very loving, very warm, very caring, and always wanted what was best for me. But like you said as well, that also presents some challenges too, because coming from a family that's been taught to, like, you have to work hard, raise a family, be good, because I was raised a Maronite Catholic as well. So there's the religious side of it. So raise a family and that, and work hard, and then you're born with a child with a disability. It's like, well, we were never taught about this. How do we, what do we do in this situation? How do we best support this beautiful child to live in this world, So and I guess, to speak to some of the challenges, one of the first challenges was the level of protection that was put around me. It's called, as it's referred to sometimes, as the cotton wool being piled on thick. And of course that was done out of love, but I also had a fear of, me being hurt, or me being, yeah, just keep it safely. And I was encouraged, but I wasn't pushed. You know what I mean? So Um, and growing up, and I've always felt a sense of being sort of held back or restricted, so as you will, if you will. Um, and at immature ages, it's like, especially when you're going through your teen years and early adult years, it's like you're in that time. Like I was in that time in my life where I just wanted to go and experience life, experience the world, and all those sorts of things. But then I have this what it seemed at the time like a handicap at the time, and then so I didn't really early on develop much of a social life, and didn't get too involved in many activities and all those sorts of things, and I was very much spent a lot of time on my own. Like I was, of course, with my family and everything, but definitely spent a lot of time like with myself. Had a couple of small handful of friends, and sometimes the family used to take me out and stuff like that, and my friend as well. Like I had a best friend at the time in Sydney. We used to go, we used to hang out quite a bit, but there was always this, I guess, sense of a fear of like really getting into the world and really experiencing and interacting and engaging with the world, because of fear of being hurt or injured, or if the world's not safe, like there's crime and there's all sorts of things and people take advantage, all those sorts of things, which are true, but so I'm so grateful for my family and for my parents because they really did the best they could with what they knew and what they understood and what they didn't know, you know. And I'm also grateful for that because it showed me, as the years went on, it demonstrated to me how much more I wanted it for myself, like I don't want to say I had to fight for it, but I just really had a deep desire, and I had to really like uh, essentially follow the nudges, I like to call it, and I, did live a small portion of my life because there is also a thing around, people with disabilities and stuff like, um, sort of like feeling like a victim as well. And I definitely experienced that, like particularly in my teens, because it's at that age again, it's just like that, you want to forge my own way in life, And so certainly in my teens and late teens and early adulthood, there was that desire, but there was no sort of outlet, if you will, or there was no well, at least at the time I perceived there wasn't, there was no outlet, there was no way out, or there was no, ways of doing that. I didn't really feel supported in that. And so, but the desire was greater. But then, yeah, the phase where I went through, I guess, where I was experiencing being the victim, um, there was literally a point, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but there was literally a point where I actually was asking the question, that deep question is like, why am I actually here? Like, I had this perception of myself that I actually was broken. It's just like, what value could I possibly have to offer this world? Like, like why was I even born? What am I even doing here? Like, and I say that like I wasn't, suicidal or anything, but it was a genuine, deep curiosity of like, what am I actually doing here? Because I didn't feel like I had a sense of direction in my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life because I didn't know what I could do with my life. And so it was that genuine questions like, apart from existing, what else am I doing here? Like, why am I even here? And it was a very distinct moment. And like, I was sitting there asking this question, and then this feeling and this resounding voice came through, and I'm just getting goosebumps as I'm saying this because it's one of those real moments I remember so clearly. This feeling and this voice came through, and he says, "You're here for a much bigger reason, bigger purpose. Just trust that." And
Mm.
it was that feeling and that voice that I don't know if you both have ever had that come through, and it's just like it's
Yep.
undeniable. You cannot deny it. It's just like I can't even question that. Like I can, but it's like the feeling is just like, no, that's truth actually coming through, and I don't even know what like. I'm in this state asking this question. I get that come through, and I'm like, I don't even know what that looks like or how that's. I'm looking at where I am and where that is. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how that's going to happen, but I know I have to trust what I just experienced right now. and I just let it go, and it's just like, it's been a journey since, and my
And
background is quite diverse.
mm, and that was that balance card. So to me, that, like, whenever I see justice, it's the truth in a matter, and like that, stepping up. So this is kind of what I do. I have a little reading here, and these cards kind of pop up as you intuitively, well, as we've been guided. So what is being said, that's a clarification. So for people at home that don't believe in woo woo, like, I pulled these cards beforehand. We have never spoken before this. Like, these are those moments that go, yes, that's exactly it. Because, like, when I think of justice, most people are like, oh yeah, you're getting your punishment, but it's not. It's the truth is revealed, and it's that inner truth inside. So justice comes about and creates that balance when that truth is revealed. All of those hidden things that are no longer there. And there was also the temptation card, which is usually the devil, all around, like, limiting beliefs, that victimization, like, look at me, like, why
Yeah.
me? It's always happening to me. Like, what is my purpose? That discontent and boredom, the waiting game of, like, I don't even know what I'm doing. 4 cards. Okay, that's just been said. There's a few more here, but there's
Well,
their
it's
connections.
funny you bring up the temptation devil card as well, because one of the things that actually fired me up too, it was roughly around that time, I think it was, or maybe after that time. Again, I had a relative, asking me, how you been? What have you been up to in your life? And I'm like, oh, at the time I was looking for work, and I'm like, I just want to do something with myself, look for work. And then I'm so grateful for this moment, because I know this relative did this out of love, and I really appreciate it. But it was also the medicine I needed in that moment too, because this particular relative says to me, it's just like, but you don't need to, you've got a disability, like, it's like, you don't, it's not expected of you to do this and that. And it was said out of love and from a good place. But at the time, for me, it was like, how did I perceive that at the time? It was like, um, that's okay. You don't need to do that. You could just stay there, and you could, like, I don't know. I actually can't clearly remember what I perceived at that time, but it was enough to fire me up to just like, oh, I'll show you.
Yeah.
It gave
That
me
moment.
a fire to like
Yeah.
You're
that
going to
didn't
tell
go
me
down
no?
well for me at the time, but now I can, yeah, exactly. It's just like, don't tell me what I can't do, and what, it's just like, it's just kind of like saying, yeah, you can sit over there, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. It's just like, but I'm this burning desire inside is just like, it's kind of like trying to put water over that fire, in a way. It's just like, I don't think so.
Oh gosh, that feeling. I think a
So I
lot of
guess that
people can
speaks to that
resonate.
temptation card as well.
I think even in my own
Yeah.
experiences, a lot of it was my parents as well. Like my mom saying, "Oh, you can't do that. You're not going to make money out of that, or that's not. Girls don't do that." And then it was like, you know what? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to show you. And it's at fire. And I think last year, Flea and I met this, I think, 9-figure coach, and he's like, "There's no money in education. You guys should just like dissolve your business." And then we were like, we're going to show you. We're going to make our millions and be of service to the world, because that fuel and that fire of like not seeing the lens that actually, can't you see that there actually is another way? And sometimes it's that fire that is like, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, where it's like, actually, yes, we can. We're going to do it our way.
Yes,
Or I'm going to find
absolutely.
my own way through this and forge whatever it is that needs to happen. And it's that creator being, that essence, that truth, that voice, and that eternal, like, you know what? You can do anything and everything, and the things will unfold. I can feel the fire, and Flea's other beautiful name is Passion Fire. What did you want to add to that, Flea?
Yeah, that it riles me up. It was the minute he said that, I was like, oh, okay, yep, you're not our person. Thank you very much. Like, I can't believe I even spent the day listening to you. Like, wow, how narrow-minded. But to actually say that to like, Marie has a daughter in private school. She pays for her child's education. Like, there's no money in education? Yes, there is. There is so much money in education, and education isn't just for kids, and that's where that narrow-mindedness really stepped in, because, like, we're not just here to teach the children. We're here to teach the next generation of leaders how to teach, because that's the
Yes.
big difference. Is like, we need that next level of how can we change this completely, because teachers, and we're both teachers by trade, so we can speak into this, but we're taught one way that
Mm.
doesn't work. And we know it doesn't work because it's
Mhm.
batting us in the head literally daily, going, like, these kids are misbehaving, they're not listening, they're just not inspired. And there are the nice teachers that can get around the system and can manage to get some good information in there. But why can't we all be that way?
Mm.
And that was the more that we wanted to bring. It's like, we can
Mm.
do this because we all want it. We want a new education system for our kids because we want to see our lives bettered in the environment around us.
Yeah.
And if these kids are left to their devices to cause a mark, well, that's not the safety and security we need as adults. So, yeah,
Yeah.
there is
And
lots of money in education.
and it's in community. And like I think about
Mm.
Bash, when
Well,
you spoke before you played, you're educating all those business owners about your story, about the music. We all have that ability to teach, and it comes back to the storytellers within us. I'll flick it back over to you
mhm.
because, like, yeah, this piece about all of us being learners, like, I think that is something
Mm.
powerful.
Yes, we all have something to teach, and we're all lifelong students, and I love, like, and what I was came up for me when you both mentioned that as well, was just like, it's also a symptom of the world, the current world we live in, and the paradigm we're in too, because we're in such a treat the symptom rather kind of world. It's in our education system, it's in our healthcare system, where the paradigm that's current is like, it's all geared towards treating symptoms instead of actually, let's invest, like, actually discover what true causes are here, and actually do, instead of trying to cure things, why don't we heal things from a deeper level, so that we don't have to keep treating symptoms. So for example, and I'm sure you both can speak to this, it's like, well, the kids that are mucking up in that, well, is it that there's something wrong with them, or they're bored and they need a different kind of stimulation, because they're just not being stimulated in the way they need to be stimulated, and not learning in the ways that they need to learn to actually integrate the information, or what they feel is most relevant to them. Because how many, we've heard all those stories of people that have been, like, dyslexic, or people that didn't do well in school, that are absolutely, crushing it in the world. And it's like, but the things that they needed weren't nurtured, because they're trying to get jammed into this sort of system that's just trying to be one size fits all, but it doesn't. And I know from my own experience, like, I didn't get the highest grades in school, and I didn't, there were certain subjects that I didn't necessarily excel in, but were forced to learn it, and some of these things I don't even apply in my life. And I'm not the only one. Sure, this is a conversation we've heard from so many people, and I love that you're both doing that, because it's just like, um, affecting that paradigm shift that we need in the collective, and the education system certainly has been one of the big topics of conversation. It's been a little bit taboo as well, but it's just like, for years I've been, hearing that conversation of how, the education system is one of those systems that really needs a change, you know, um, to support people best to really. So I've heard that, the word education, even, is it education? Yeah, education. I hope I'm not misquoting this, but in Latin isn't necessarily to regurgitate, but it's to extract from. So as educators, you know, the role of educators is to extract from the individual what's already in them, rather than trying to jam things into them and say, and regurgitate this, become a robot and go get a job and do this thing and become a process orientated, um, non-living being, essentially, like a mundane, and it's not, there's goodness in that too. Some people love their jobs, they love what they're doing, that's great, but again, it's not one size fits all. And what I love as well about what you shared, and even my experience, because as I grew in my spiritual journey, is, and I know you've both spoken about this in the past about, like, the oneness and how we're all one in that, like we're in this, physicality that's separate, and we have these separate experiences, these unique, but they're unique experiences, but innately we're all connected, and we're all connected to source energy and the universe or God, or, whichever way people want to look at it. And one of the funny things about the universe and the cosmic nature of life is, I've heard it been referred to in the past as like the cosmic joke, the cosmic giggle. And it's like, when I look at my experience that I just shared with you with fire and what you both, it's like, someone must have, that's the universe given me an invitation. It's an invitation to, like, and it's pushing the button. It needs to push to be like, are you sure about this? Is this what you really want to do? Is this really what you want? And it's like, because back then, of course, I hadn't quite cultivated the wisdom and the experiences that I have now. And back then it was more of a reactive thing. And that was perfect. And that's no judgment on that either, because that was the perfect way to respond in that moment. But if that happens now, of course, I have a different way of responding to that, both within myself and with the other person. Now, just to be clear, I didn't really lash out or anything at that particular relative. I'm like, oh yeah, thanks, whatever. But inside, I was like, I'll freaking show you. So yeah, there's wisdom in all of it.
That slight level of, I just now don't like you as much.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, oh, like, how dare you do that? That beautiful card was the partnerships and
Totally.
alliances, which is, that coming together in this. That's what we're seeking, that togetherness and that education, like you said, like to pull out of what is already there. That is the oneness inside of us. It's like each one of us has a divine little spark that is part of such a majestic puzzle that, all it takes is for five of them to be on a blip, and that puzzle doesn't brighten, it doesn't bloom, it doesn't expand. And that's the thing, like, as humans, like, we're striving for technology, we're striving for advancement, yet the thing that we need to actually bring together is the alliance. We're not in competition with one another. A challenge is beautiful, it's healthy, it brings out the best in us, but that competition, that level of like, well, why not? Why can't we have this dream? Like, even if it is such a ridiculous fantasy, why can't we hold on to that little bit of hope? And that was actually a card that came out for me this morning. It's this hope. If you don't hold that spark of hope, it's very quickly goes down the other end of depression, which is what we're seeing in so many of our young kids. It's like that hope has been taken away because the life that we're teaching them
Yes.
isn't for them. It's not for most of us as adults. Like, anyone in their 30s, 40s, 50s and onwards are going like, what on earth is happening to this world? It's crazy. This is not what we signed up for. This is not, and I say that because I do know we did, but at the same time, not at this level of separation from each other. So, that partnership and alliance, that's what we're building. And so much of that is just saying, like, we don't have to do it on our own. Coming together, like, so many of us have the same idea. I think we've interviewed like quite a few people now. We're going to have to get a tally.
Yeah.
But we've had so many people that have had this same idea, this same goal. And it's like, well, why are we all trying to do it separately? Like, if each one of us is a little bit of that fuse board, so to say, like, lighting it up, wow, how much quicker can we get to this destination of bliss and harmony and balance, where we're actually educating and we're living from purpose and intent. Like, that's what I strive for daily. And we started this, you
Amazing.
talking about your shadow of not wanting to be seen. And that's exactly, like, I had the conversation with Marie yesterday, that exact conversation. I don't want to be seen. The world isn't safe to be seen because I have such a big heart, and all it takes is for one person to crush that. And that hope, that spark, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to tell me I can't create a school my only other option is to go back into a system that's failing 90% of the kids in it. And that's not who I am in my heart. Like, my heart, I am a teacher. It's in every single astrology chart, human design, like, you name it, it's there. I've tried to avoid it. It's like, oh, really? Is there not anything else? But, this is the thing. Like, how am I to teach with all of my heart in this world that's not safe to teach in that way?
Yes.
And it's that togetherness. It's this. It's
And to
sharing
teach
stories.
from your truth as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that piece around truth,
Yeah,
like
100%.
your passion. Yeah. And that 100% of your heart and being in your truth and authenticity is like when we come together, like you feel it, like you feel like you're leaning in to the fullness of who you are. And, Flea does have the teacher in there. What does that one say, Flea? I can't read that one.
You said the fullness, and it's fulfillment of wishes.
And like the fullness, like, when each of us tap into our gifts and, we do have these roles to play, but we're not just that. They are a gift. And there is so much more to us and our big hearts and our creativity and that essence within. And whether it's through talking like this and sharing story or through, Flea's a beautiful artist, and she has an artistry of asking these questions that get you to go deep, where I'm like, I've never met someone that asks so many questions this way. Like, that's an art in itself. Like, we are all artists and creatives. And so, Bash, like, I know leaning into this gift of yours of music was something that I remember you saying was a calling that found you.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to share, like, we're talking about the searching for purpose, the fire, listening to that truth, and these gifts that we're leading into now in being in our pure essence. Like, tell us a little bit more about this calling and how you found music, this medicine, and this next phase of what you are embodying now.
Yes, absolutely. My journey with sound generally and music has been a beautiful one. So, as I mentioned earlier, like in my younger years, particularly in my teens and early adulthood, I spent a lot of time with myself, and music was one of those things. And even though at the time it was a lot more mainstream music that I used to listen to and things like that, but it was one of those outlets that I felt I can connect to, and that understood me in some facets of my life, I guess, and actually as a hobby, I used to just in my room like to DJ, and that's one of the things I still enjoy doing rather. I don't do it as much at the moment. I would like to, but definitely it was one of those early creative, expressions of mine that I used to like mixing music together and weaving that beautiful tapestry of music at the time. But ultimately, I used to especially listen to a lot of emotional music because I used to feel a lot of emotion and still do. And that's how I feel like I used to connect. And certainly went through my phases of depression back then. I'm really glad we're speaking to the mental health thing. I literally just did a morning, part of an open ceremony for a mental health walk on Sunday. And some of the stories that he shared with me was quite horrific that I won't repeat here, but it's like, yeah, there's definitely a mental health crisis and it really needs to be addressed. And that's why I love a lot of what you guys are doing as well, with the education and for the newer generations coming through. But anyway, that was a quick side note. So along my journey, music was one of the things that I felt like one of the very few things actually that I felt like I could connect with back then. And that gave me a sense of just connection to myself and the world in a strange way, And then as I started, I guess, with that fire burning, as I started gradually taking steps towards my own sort of independence and venturing out into the world, little step by step, and getting my nervous system sort of accustomed to it. Actually, one of my first parts of my journey when I really sort of transitioned from that part of my life to like really living a much more independent life and stuff like that was personal development. Actually, is where a lot of it really started, because I always also had this insatiable like hunger for knowledge about how our minds work, how do we work, and like watching movies like Bruce Lee and whatever, it's just like the power of the mind, and I was like, I just felt this deep like hunger of like, I want to know more about that, like how do I. So um so I ended up on that journey first, and ended up becoming a master NLP practitioner, and ended up winning a ticket to Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within. And that was like one of those experiences for me that really was, if you want to call it like a portal or another pivot point for me, because it really, helped me energetically and physically and on other levels as well, like pivot the direction of my life on an unconscious level, especially, and doing the fire walk and all that. And I just kept, pursuing this path of like, yeah, the speaking and the coaching and stuff like that, and working on doing the work on myself, which I still do, by the way. It's an ongoing journey, but doing that work and supporting others with that as well through coaching, and then sharing my story through inspirational speaking and stuff like that. So music was kind of like in the background there somewhere, but it wasn't sort of, but it was. I love the journey and how you do this, and then just sort of sits over here for a while, and then you do that, and then they start coming together. And this is where I feel like is happening now, because I was really going deep on the personal growth, spiritual growth, and this is where the sound comes back into it. So for many years, so pretty much since 2011, I've been on the personal growth and spiritual growth journey and personal development. And it was around 2015. 2015 was where like I was deep in the personal growth, but then I started to get glimpses and of like the shamanic side of it, and particularly like the shamanic drumming journeys and the sound journeys. And this is while I was still in Sydney, because I moved up to the Gold Coast 2016. So this is 2015. And the same woman that put on that sound healing where I discovered the crystal didge, prior to that, to one of the shamanic drumming journeys, like sound meditation journey, sound bath sort of things that they had at the time. And there was, I think, one or two guys there playing the didgeridoo. And I remember laying there and going on my own journey, and then I started hearing the sound of the didgeridoo, and then before I knew it, I felt like the sound of the didgeridoo connected with me, and I was deep in the journey at this stage, and I wouldn't be surprised, it's the same voice from that I mentioned earlier, just kept saying, "Get a didge, get a didge, get a didge." And about a week later, like I just went on this hunt for a week. I'm like, I gotta get this didge. It wasn't the crystal one. I started on a wooden one. But like I said, I was living in Sydney at the time, went to the Rocks Spirit Gallery, and the guy helped me pick one out. And I took it home that day. And for 3 hours straight, I'm sitting on my beanbag, and I'm just like, I was so determined to at least just get the sound of the drone going, And from there, it was just, that's how the didgeridoo journey started. And I would even dare say the sound healing journey started. And as it relates to the other side of music, like especially when I, started getting more into the shamanic and spiritual circles and stuff like that, and particularly when I moved up here as well in the Gold Coast, my taste in music started to change. I started going more the alternative, and so even like what I started DJing changed as well. And I started actually DJing at gigs and some of my own gigs as well. In 2018, I had my own event called Dance Formation, which is what I was saying before. It's like that culmination of the coming together of like my passionate love for the personal growth transformation side of it, and then there's the music and sound, and they both came together, and I created this event called Dance Formation. And essentially, that was a dance journey. So I would prepare an hour to hour and a half set I'd specifically select music to take people on this journey to dance with themselves and their inhibitions and stuff like that. And then during the set, I'll bring out my didge as well, and sometimes play that during certain songs, and my medicine drum as well, because I made a medicine drum with a medicine man the same year I started playing didgeridoo. And so it's just all these, like you were saying before, Flea, all these pieces of the puzzle that just start coming together, and then so that was around 2018. And then the music production side of it is just like, because natural progression from DJing, I started getting curious about producing music, because I had a Mac and there happened to be this program on there called GarageBand, and I'm like started exploring that, and then I started weaving these loops and things together, and I'm like, you know what, I really want to learn more about this. And then so I moved down to Byron in 2019 and to study diploma for music production at SAE, Creative Media College, and I was down there for 18 months, and then I moved back to the Gold Coast, and so I became a music producer as well. So my stuff is on Spotify now. If you look up The Blind Mystery, funny name, I have 3 releases on there at the moment, and I'm working on a 4th at the moment. And but to your point as well, Marie, is just like, even with my music production, it's like I don't see myself as one of those producers that's like, factory line, just pumping out tracks, and just like pumping out beats, pumping out tracks. It's like, that's not me. And that really does not feel like that's part of my path. With the music that I work on, it really takes time, because I really feel like I channel through a lot of it. And it's very intentional. It all has a message, it all has a feeling and aesthetic to it. It's just like, for example, my first track is called Arrived, and it's got like a real sort of like dubstep, bass and beat feel to it, but it's not, it's like, that's for impact. But what is the track is about? It's like, because for me, I felt like at the time I was creating this track, it's like, in a way, it's like, for me, I was expressing sort of like, I've arrived, I'm staking my claim, I'm here, and and my intention for the listeners, they listen to it and they feel that power in that, it's just like, yeah, I'm freaking here, I've arrived, And the second track I made is called Conduits of Spirit, and I did some recordings with a beautiful dear friend of mine, a dear brother of mine, Neil McLeod, who's an older gentleman who's well-traveled, who's traveled around the world, plays all these beautiful instruments, and I got him to record a few instruments. And but that's got a bit of a lighter sort of reggae-ish feel to it, but it's like a fun light track, but it's like that, I guess, portal or channel to connect with yourself, being the conduit of spirit in lightness, and it's very like, I've had this feedback as well when I envisioned this myself as well while I was creating this track, was like, it's like moving through nature as well. So it's like this fun track, you can dance to it, have a little, bit of a bounce to it, but it's like, there's also like these elements to it that's like you're walking through nature. So it's really beautiful. So again, I can't create that in a day, and it's like, yeah, I pumped it out, check out my latest, and that's all beautiful too, and has its place. And then, the third release I have on it is called Embrace the Mystery. And this is a lot about what we talk about too. It's just like, there's all the facets of life and things that is known and we know about, but the majority of it we don't know. It's the unknown. And this is where the blind mystery comes from. That name came through while I was in Byron, because I was thinking to myself, oh, what's my producer name going to be? And, I started coming up with all these clever names, but it's like, but I don't connect with it, and I gave it time, while I was working on tracks, and I was still studying. So I'm like, I don't need to know the answer right now, second. But it's just like, I just kept creating that tension, which is tension I want to speak to a bit later. But like, I started creating that tension for the universal spirit to resolve and bring forth the answer for that, to create the answer for that. And then just one day it just landed. It was like the blind mystery, and how fitting, because we're talking about my disability and being partially blind or legally blind. It's like, again, another piece to the puzzle. It's just, but it's not just about me being partially blind or anything like that. It's like, for me, the blind mystery is speaking to that nature of life, that's the unknown, that is blind, that you can't see it. It's like, we talk about spirit and stuff like that, and if some people want to call it the Holy Spirit or whatever, you don't see it, you don't see it, but it's there. You feel it. It's an experience. It's a sense of it. That's the blind mystery. And it's also like, you know, we can set goals, we can make plans in life or whatever, but ultimately we don't know. We don't know
Mm.
exactly what's going to happen. That's also a blind mystery. And so for me, the blind mystery speaks to that aspect of life. And then that's just evolved onto the blind mystery experience, which now incorporates, everything. Basically, incorporates and encompasses everything I do between
Mm.
the music production project, coaching and the speaking, and then the sound healing for sure. Because that's also like you come in, you're going to experience the sound healing, and you're going to go on your own journey. That's a blind mystery. Don't know what's going to happen. Don't know what you're going to experience, what downloads you're going to get, what nuggets you're going to get. But that's part of
Mm.
the magic, you know. And just a very brief last mention of like, well, how the sound healing came into the fray. So for 5 years, I was playing the didge mostly for myself. It's just like I felt called to connect with this beautiful instrument and for my own inner healing, because even as a player, you get healing benefits from it. And so, and it's a form of breath work in itself. I've noticed too. So for 5 years, I was mostly playing for myself, and then it was when I moved back to the Gold Coast, and I used to attend this open mic regularly, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to start sharing it on this stage at this open mic, and it was a beautiful open mic at the time. It's not on it anymore, but it was much of my community that used to go to it as well, and used to sometimes have jams with other instrumentalists and stuff, and that's how I sort of more or less started sharing it publicly. And then eventually I felt called to get some flutes as well and stuff like that. And then so my sound healing tools, if you will, started building. And then it wasn't until 2022, so fairly early, I was playing some flute for a friend, and she was just sitting there and she was receiving this flute, and then after I finished, she's like, "Wow, Bash, I just feel like I just went somewhere else." And that feeling came through again. It's like, it's time. You need to start doing some sound healings, and just getting chills around that as well again. It's just like, it's time. Like, you've been cultivating sound and all this for all these years now. Now you need to start sharing this with the world and supporting people in their healing journey. And then I said yes to it. I started with my own small little events, like 10, 12 people at this really intimate space, private space. And it was only 5 months later after that, and this is a message in this too, when you there's that thing inside that you need to say yes to, what happens? It's like 5 months later, I find myself on, I don't know if you both know Dr. Espen and the Quantum Academy, Quantum Experience, as a 3-day seminar called the Quantum Advanced. And there's a bit of a series of synchronicities and series of events that happened that led me to be on his stage, playing my crystal didge for 350 people. And that was 5 months after I said yes to, like, yep, I'm going to do sound healing and I'm going to start doing this publicly. And then there was another vision I downloaded before even that happened, a couple of months into my sound healing journey, where it just came through that I was going to be doing some sound healing at what used to be the Versace Hotel here in the Gold Coast, now known as the Imperial Hotel. And there's the mind part that when it came in, like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do that, because I was, I'm going to have to put on this event and try and get people in and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, I don't know how that's going to happen. And I just like, you know what? Just trust the vision and I let it go. And then I ended up connecting with someone months later who was the partner of the woman that organizes, I don't know if you've heard of candlelight concerts or the candlelit concerts, where they have the string quartets and it's all candlelit, and it's beautiful. And they were just starting to bring in like a sound healing side to it, and like a yoga series, like a mindful glow series. And I didn't have to organize anything. I didn't have to promote. I didn't have to get sales. All I had to do was show up, and I'd get paid to do 3 sound healings in one morning at the Versace. It happened. Like, this is all within not even being a year of being a sound, like actually offering sound healing, I should say, because I guess you could say I've been a sound healer for a while. So that was quite a lot in there, but that essentially has been my journey and process with the sound and everything else I'm doing for that matter. So yeah.
That is so amazing, and I feel like I now need to go get a harp because that's been popping up as one of those like little, oh, the harp, and I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be lovely. It's like I could imagine playing that all the time, but I've never even tried. I don't even think I've seen one in real life, but harp has been on my trajectory
Wow.
for a while,
Yeah.
so that might be
That is so
interesting.
interesting because I feel like that's one of my next instruments too.
Oh my goodness.
Big harp.
There you go,
God,
destiny.
destiny.
Wow.
The power of
Wow,
music,
that's so
right?
amazing.
It's so interesting.
100%.
Like
That's right.
my daughter wanted to play. She's 8 now, but last year she's like, "Mummy, I want the violin. I want the violin." And we
Mm.
did start down that path, and then her teacher's like, "Wow, she's really talented." She was like 6. She's like, "I don't normally start because they're not ready," but she started picking it up. She doesn't do it now, but I feel like she will come back to it.
Mm.
But it was like she had this like, I want to do this, and she, like, my husband listens to an array of music as well, and
Mhm.
is it there's these amazing artists, there's so many violinists, but the electric violinist, and she was like absorbing this, but there's something beautiful. I mean, any instrument is beautiful, they all have a different vibration and frequency of healing and just uplifting, but there was something innate within her that was like, oh, you played this before. And so Flea with the harp, you've probably played it before.
More than likely, different life.
Right,
this
yeah.
this one I've been a little
Yeah.
bit tone deaf, so I'm not sure how that will work, but I do feel things quite intensely, so you never know.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely, and even with the Yadaki, like with the Didge, for me, it's because like I laugh about it. I laugh about this sometimes. I laugh about it with friends. I was like, how does a Lebanese guy coming from Lakemba in Sydney go from living that life and being in that environment to being on the Gold Coast, playing the Yadaki and the didgeridoo as powerfully as I do, and living this life that I'm living now? It's just like, and it's just incredible how the journey unfolds, and especially when you follow the nudges and you trust those innate nudges, if you will.
Yeah, I love
It's like
that.
that intuition, that invitation from spirit, that whichever way you want to look at it, it's just like it's there for a reason, like. And then I think about, well, maybe I was actually indigenous in a past life,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe I've come back to bring forth new medicine or something like that.
I love that. I love that. And I know at the dinner table, we were talking about that sometimes this can be considered taboo. Like you said, having a Lebanon man playing a didgeridoo, but it was a calling. And this is why I love
Yes.
like smashing the limiting beliefs around this. I do work, relief work in Indigenous school, and in the education system, a lot of tribes and families will go, well, that's not for non-Indigenous people. This is, these stories. And it's like balancing the respect of culture, but also going, hang on, what if though? What if it wasn't? What if you listened to this person or listened to their story and you felt it from their heart? Then you would know that they were born to play that. And I think we were sharing a story of another mutual friend that Flea and I have, and she shared her beautiful story about how she was born to play that instrument. And again, being a woman playing a didgeridoo, which in the cultural understanding is a male instrument, and women are not meant to touch it. And hearing her story and her teachings and her remembrances, that were her journey that she intimately shared with us, I was like, wow, this is powerful, and this is something that people need to understand and hear. And it's not out of disrespect, and it's not out of wanting to prove somebody wrong or a culture wrong. it's that
Yes.
intimate journey of self. Like you said, you played it for yourself first, and I think, and this is what we also love at Awæcnian, is like this self-mastery of listening to the truth within, listening to your own soul's calling. And I love, I've got that beam cup too. I love that. But like,
That's my trophy
these,
from the night.
it's a great mug. Beam Awards, we're promoting you right now. And Beck, I'll tag you in this later. But that piece around that authentic essence, which I feel is what we love bringing, and opening that door of like, well, what if it's not just this way of doing things? It's
Yes.
also this, we do deeply respect our ancestors from different cultures and tribes, but it's also like, let's deeply respect the being and the person who this is their journey, and people are excited to see how we can blend the worlds. And I think that's really powerful.
Well, I actually have a
I'd like to.
story around that, funny enough.
You go.
So you're going to say,
You
please?
go. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
so, well, I have this beautiful Indigenous friend who I met funny enough, at one of my other gigs, and she's real big advocate on unification and you know more people doing acknowledgements of country, because the Indigenous just can't all do it themselves, and they're only still make up such a small percentage of the general population. And so her sister actually does a lot of cultural protocol teaching, and her sister's apparently trained around about 22,000 people in that. And so I had a recent experience where I did an acknowledgement of country, and my understanding going into that was that anyone can, as long as, and like my friend said to me, as long as it's not done tokenistically or performative, and it's just like a generic, yeah, we're just doing it because this is what you do. It's like, no, like you're saying, Marie, it comes from the heart. It comes from a place of understanding and respect, which is what I always endeavor to do. And she said, as long as it comes from integrity and intention. And she says, you, my brother, have both those things. So to receive that respect from an Indigenous sister, I like to refer to her as an Indigenous sister, because she really feels like that. It feels really nice. And so I had this experience, and this individual was like, only Indigenous people are meant to be doing acknowledgement of country. Like, I was aware that only Indigenous people are meant to do welcome to country, and I totally understand that. But in terms of as far as acknowledgements of country go, my understanding and awareness and what I've been told is that anyone can do it. There's no real right or wrong way to do it, as long as, again, it's not tokenistic. It's not just like here you go, we've done it sort of thing. Like, it's actually done with love and respect and understanding. So this person was like, yeah, only Indigenous people are meant to do it, and that sort of thing. And I didn't react. I just sort of heard them out, and I'm like, look, okay, cool. So this person actually even went as far as to say I was actually offended by that. And again, I just stayed calm about it. I'm like, okay, look, I apologize, and I'm sorry if you were offended by that. And what would you like to see instead? And she's like, well, and I said to her, what about playing Dig? Is that okay? And she's like, yep, that's fine, as long as someone does acknowledgement of country first, like that's Indigenous and blah blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I went about doing whatever I was doing, but it was still there in the back of my mind, because at the end of the day, that integrity is really important to me. And as much as I can, because at the end of the day, you're not going to please everyone. We're always going to trigger someone in the world, because in some cases, it might not even be what you're doing. Just, I feel like in the world, just by virtue of your existence and who you are and how you express yourself in the world, you're going to, trigger someone. And they just won't like you, because they just won't, because for whatever it stirs up within them that they don't like about themselves, right? And so as the years went on, especially in my personal growth journey, I just really, really kept embedding that more and more. It's like, you can't please everyone. There's always going to be someone that doesn't like you, but it's not personal. or they're not going to like what you do, or they have something to say about it, have an opinion on it, or a judgment around it. So I've learned to keep myself in my own center around a lot of that and keep myself grounded. And so I thought, okay, I took it on board. I'd react. I'm like, no, we're allowed to. Like, no, I'm like, okay, I heard you out. Cool. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry that's how I'm sorry you feel that way. So the next day I consulted with my Indigenous friend that I just told you about. And she says, actually, anyone can give an acknowledgement of country at any time. There's no right or wrong way to do it, as long as it's like what I've just shared before, like not tokenistic. That it comes, and if you can modify it as well, and all that sort of thing. So, is to what you were both speaking to there about the different paradigms and the different ideas, is like trying to like say no, this is wrong and this is that. It's just like, well, sometimes you just got to keep moving with what you know in your heart and what you know is right, and also, I guess in this case, I'm grateful that I had that friend that I can consult with and to say, hey, am I doing the right thing here? Like, have I done something wrong? Like, and willing to, like, if I had, willing to actually, own that. Like, okay, well, I didn't mean to do that, but, but yeah, that was just a quick side story to speak to that, where you both were just sharing.
It's so important too, and the fact that you're bringing this up now, I've had probably 4 synchronicities this morning that have been talking about this appropriation of culture and this idea that it's only for those people. And like my understanding, like I've been
Yes.
brought up in such a diverse environment, like I've lived in all types of cultural families and homes and things like that, and
Yeah.
I was accepted into every single one of them. Now, as a
Mm-hmm.
traditional Australian white person, I have no culture, but I
Mm.
love it. Like, I am so inspired by it. And part of my history is I started off in fashion design, so I was teaching that. And like, I looked at my audience, like my classroom, 4 of the students that were in there were Indigenous, and I'm like, "How can I
Mm.
use fashion to actually help them with their
Mm.
cultural," because that's what they spoke about in the class, and it's like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if I
Mm.
could get an elder in to share the tradition of, like, the natural dyes and the prints and the storytelling through fabric?" And I
Mm.
knew that there was actually a
Yes.
company in the Gold Coast that actually was seeking designers and Indigenous kids, and I thought, "Well, this is perfect. They can get their degree and then they can apply and they can actually go and work in this company that specializes with their culture." And I thought, this is fabulous.
Mm.
The registry office wouldn't allow me to teach that class because I was not Indigenous, even if I got somebody in. I wasn't
Wow.
then allowed to teach the other kids in the class. So it had to solely 100% be
Mm.
an Indigenous class. I could have had the elder in there and still given the TAE lesson, but it wasn't then allowed to be delivered to the
Mm.
non-Indigenous kids in the class. And I just went, what an opportunity that is
Mm.
lost to celebrate that culture, to bring back an ancient tradition and a
Yes.
natural tradition, to then incorporate storytelling
Yes.
into print for all kids. Like, that's the point and the purpose, is the celebration of that story, of that culture, of these traditions. Now,
100%.
me as a non-Indigenous person, I am celebrating that tradition, but because of my originality, I'm not allowed. That just irks me
Mm.
because we are losing so much of the beautiful resources that we have from the cultural traditions and
Yep.
this ancestral knowledge that, yes, I'm not Indigenous, I'm not Egyptian, I'm
Mm.
not Mayan, I'm none of these things, but yet I have so much of that wisdom in me because of that passion to learn. And I'm meant to just push it
Yep.
to the side and go, "Oh yeah, it's not important because you're just a white Aussie girl." I'm like, how
Yep.
limiting is this perception? Like, to celebrate these beautiful gifts and that music. Like, if you never learnt to play, how many
Mhm.
people wouldn't be gifted with
Mhm.
this sound healing?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that night,
yeah,
the
this
amount of women the amount of people that came up to me that night afterwards, to be honest, because it was only a short performance at the beginning, and then they got on with the award ceremony and stuff. And part of me was like, I'm not sure if anyone will actually remember that by the end of the night, sort of thing. Just that, I guess, if you want to call it humility, whatever. And then throughout the night, I was just so surprised at how many people would come up to me and just say, "That was a beautiful performance. Thank you so much. I really felt that in my heart." And there was like 2
Mm,
or 3 of them that said, "I really felt like my heart was just opening." And there was one in particular that actually spoke to my acknowledgement of country, and she's like, "Thank you so much for that. I really felt like I connected with my ancestors, and I really felt this beautiful, ancestral healing coming through." I'm just getting chills as I'm
mm,
saying that, and I'm just like,
Mm,
had I not delivered that, that wouldn't have happened, you
mm,
know? And so there's that old saying, it's just like, for the benefit of the one, I can't remember how the saying goes, but yeah, it's just like sometimes you got to weigh up what's going to be the benefit of the collective versus the benefit of, whatever. And it's just like, well,
mm,
by restricting and holding back, how do we expect to unify? How do we expect to preserve? How do we
mm,
expect to, you know, have these available for the future generations to
mm,
really, because like you said, it's like a lot of it is being lost, and we're not making some sort of effort, through our own truth, through our own individual callings
mm,
to that. How do we expect to really have it there for future generations to enjoy it and to understand
mm,
where we came from, who we are, and things like that,
ah, so
and to benefit from it,
mm, it's a powerful, powerful way to end. And what was that card, Flea?
I- this has been brought up so many times. I'm like, yep, it's there, okay. And I've put it to the side. And it's like I'm not going to discuss it, but it's the spiritual union card, and
Mm,
I
Mm.
actually write these. These are my interpretations, my intuition coming out. But down the bottom, like so many times, people are like, "Oh yeah, spiritual union. It's about a relationship." Yes, it can be, but the emotional bonds is
mm,
the main part down there, and the
Mm.
mirrors. So these emotional bonds to the things that we love are those
mm,
mirrors, those reflections of our soul's growth. And the problem
Mhm.
is, like, when it comes to any type of culture, half of the people that are part of that culture don't embody it. They don't love it. They
mm,
don't share it.
Mhm.
They don't live in it. Now,
Mhm.
it's going to come to a point where that culture is lost because there's nobody celebrating it.
Mhm.
And this is that
Mhm.
spiritual union. If your soul is calling it, then it is part of you.
mm,
Mhm.
And that's what we have to connect to for, and that interaction and that soul growth, like, that's the spiritual union, that's the
Yep.
destiny, that's the wheel of fortune, that's where, like you said, within weeks of listening to that call, you got this work, the dream life that wouldn't have
Mm.
happened. Like, where would you be right now if you didn't follow that calling?
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Ugh,
Absolutely. And, it's part of, supporting that transition, isn't it? From trauma to triumph, I guess, or not even triumph,
mm,
but, just
Synchronicity
unification
there.
more so.
yeah. Oh, what a powerful way to end our beautiful chat. Like from trauma to triumph. Like this piece around that unity, that coming together, not only for us now, but for the future generations. I think just those last,
Mhm.
10 minutes of what we've spoken about are really powerful. So thank you so much, Bash, for your time from both Felicia and I. And there's been some really beautiful pieces of your story that have really resonated with us and hopefully the
Mm.
listeners as well, and inspiring them to
Yeah.
notice the power of their own story, their own essence, the inner truth that's calling them to step into their greatness. And so, Bash, if people want
Yes.
to connect with you, or how can they find you?
Sure. So there's a couple of ways. If they go to theblindmysteryexperience.com, they could reach me there and check out what my latest things that are coming up, or if they'd like to inquire about me speaking, coaching, or doing private sound healings, etc., or find my music as well. You could also find me on Instagram under Bashir, so BASHIR underscore TBME, that which stands for the Blind Mystery Experience. And you could also find me at Bashir Youssef on Facebook. And if you do connect with me, please feel free to reach out and let me know where you've seen me, where you've come from. If you've seen me on this episode, just let me know, because there's so many connections coming through. And it's just like, oh, where was that one from? Where was that one from? So it really helps. But yeah, there's some of the ways you can connect with me, and yeah, I look forward to hearing from you.
Oh,
So
thank you
beautiful.
so much.
Thank
And
you.
please just beautiful. Please just typed it in underneath your name there. So anyone that is watching back can type in your website there. And we have tagged you on Instagram and on Facebook as well.
Amazing,
Goodness, it has been such
amazing.
a pleasure. And I think this essence of what we've spoken about is something we're excited about with our next summit, aren't we, Flea, that's happening in August.
Mm.
Turnkey
Oh,
transformation.
absolutely.
Do you want to just let the viewers know one more little thing before we sign off on what to look forward to with our summit, Flea?
Opening your heart. I really feel that this summit, this releasing of the restriction of the 3D world, coming into union with yourself, is what this is going to be all about. So whether you're a speaker or just somebody that wants to absorb it all, definitely come and look us up at awæcnianacademy.com, and the spelling is under our names there. Don't forget the A, E, and that lovely silent N there, that Awæcnian is the whole pronunciation is kind of weird, but we silentize that N there. So yeah.
Come and check it out. The 10th to the 14th of August, everybody. We've got some amazing speakers, presenters, healers, channelers coming in to join us already. And if you would love to join us, then we'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll chat with you soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys.